Mayor Martell,
Present.
Councilman Pierre, Councilwoman Smith,
Present.
Councilwoman Spiegel, Mayor Valle.
I'm here. Thank you. Okay, let me turn it over. Ms. Garcia?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Vice Mayor, Council. We have before you a really significant opportunity for our city in this public-private partnership that could really take us forward in future projects. I want to turn it over to Max Serta, who took the lead role. I'm calling him Mr. Boca because I haven't seen him for 2 weeks. He's been so involved in this project because there's been such a level of detail and such level of dedication. And I want to commend him for the work that he's done. I also want to commend Assistant City Attorney Sarah Johnson, who's here, who's also part of a very special team, and Stephen Zelkowitz and Mr. Lawler, who's here. We wanted to make sure that we presented something that really was an incredible project and a tremendous opportunity. We currently have a soccer program that is a good program. It yields us $3,000 a year. We don't have any scholarships. We don't have opportunity to enhance our facility. And we received this unsolicited proposal that just in scholarships alone would be a win-win for our city and for the kids that we could develop with such an amazing soccer program. So with that said, I am going to turn it over to Max Serta that will present the details. And we have the rest of the team here for any questions that you may have. Max?
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Council, Charter officers, those that are here both in person and either online or through other mediums. That's right, Manager. This proposal came to the city almost a year ago. We were talking about, and it's changed and morphed into different sort of concepts to what you see before you. If you recall, just a couple months ago, we came forward with the formal unsolicited proposal that we had received, and at that point, it encapsulated all of Mishcon Park. And from that original design, it's morphed into preserving the baseball field that is in Mishcon Park and capitalizing and really changing the scope of the southern soccer field, which currently is completely unusable. The sod is weeded, it has rocks, and so we have a soccer field to the south of Mishcon Park that the city retains no utility from. And so what we're talking about in this partnership or this P3 project is taking something, taking two things. Taking first a soccer field that has no utility for the city and completely changing the quality of it for the city to what you see before you. And also taking our soccer program, which has done very well to us over the past many years, but going from $3,000 annually to the city to changing that drastically to some significant, almost $3 million in capital investment to the city, $500,000 to a city park and infrastructure, keeping it local with scholarships, 20 scholarships to the soccer school, 20 scholarships to the soccer program in the summer, and really doing an amazing thing with not just any soccer program, but you're talking about Boca Juniors. And that's similar to someone saying, hey, I'd like to bring in a basketball program, but it's the Miami Heat. You know, we're talking about the premier international brand, Boca Juniors. So there's a couple of people that first I want to introduce, and then they'll come up and speak to us about how we've qualified in terms of meeting all the P3 statutory requirements. That would be our attorney, Stephen Zelkowitz from Gray Robinson. We also have our outside financial consultant, Kevin Lawler, and he'll speak to us about the competitive process and nature of the standard of the terms that we have in terms of the economics for the city. And let me also introduce, so first from the P3 is derived or originating from Soccer Development Group. And from them we've got Daniel Rothstein, who's their director. We've got Gustavo Bolado, who's the architect. And we also have Javier Vasquez from Berger Singerman, the law firm of Berger Singerman. And then on the city, who I owed great debt to, is certainly Kevin Lawler, as I mentioned, from NK Ventures. He helped us with the financial aspects. Steven Zelkowitz from Gray Robinson. Valerie Haber from your office as well. Sarah Johnson, obviously, was very helpful to me. And so it was just really a great teamwork in trying to craft what I think is a really good project or partnership that brings forth some tremendous quality, some great branding for the city in a soccer aspect. If I could ask, please, Steven Zelkowitz to help address the statutory requirements, the procurement requirements, and how we've met those. Thank you.
For the record, Steven Zelkowitz from the law firm of Gray Robinson. As Max said, I'm here to basically discuss the procurement process that we went through so that you all feel comfortable that we've met the letter of the law, because this is a different process than your typical competitive bidding or request for proposals or request for qualifications. So to start, Mac is referring to P3, and for those people who are watching and listening who may not understand that term, P3 simply means public-private partnership, and that's exactly what it is. It's a partnership, it's a marriage between the public entity, the city, and a private developer. So when this unsolicited proposal was submitted to the city, your city attorney reached out to me, because one of the other things I do, other than just community redevelopment agency representation, one of my other roles, I do a lot of P3 work. And I have experience in P3 projects, but what makes this one significant and cutting edge for you all is that we procured this under the new state statute. So the state of Florida recently adopted a statute in its procurement chapter entitled Public-Private Partnerships, and that is section 287.05712 for everyone who is interested in the number of the statute. So when the unsolicited proposal came in, and what this statute allows you to do that's very new and innovative that you couldn't do before is accept an unsolicited proposal and then end up negotiating with the developer for a project that you didn't actually procure yourselves by sending out an RFP. So basically the process is once you receive an unsolicited proposal, and the statute itself has a number of different criteria that that unsolicited proposal must include, and this proposal that we received was a very comprehensive proposal. It included all of those criteria that the statute requires. You are then required to basically advertise that. And so the statute then basically is giving the public an opportunity to submit proposals as well. So what you need to do under the statute is basically publish a notice in the Florida Administrative Register and a newspaper of general circulation at least once a week for 2 weeks. And the notice must state that an unsolicited proposal was received and that the city will accept other proposals for the same project. So working with your city attorney's office, they developed a very detailed public notice that was published as required by the statute. So people were well aware, based upon the statutory requirements, that you all had received this unsolicited proposal, and they were given an opportunity to provide a competing proposal. And that's the purpose of the statute when it comes to an unsolicited proposal. In our case, no other proposals were submitted following the publishing of that notice. So since there were no other proposals, what would happen, let's say if you did receive competing proposals, is then you go through sort of the ranking process that you're probably all familiar with when you do an RFP, a request for proposals, or an RFQ for qualifications. There were no competing proposals submitted. Based upon the statute, you were then eligible to go ahead and negotiate an agreement called a comprehensive agreement. We're calling it a management agreement with the developer to include all the terms of the proposed relationship. The statute also includes a number of safeguards, things such as bonding requirements, which Kevin will speak to, and with respect to construction, bonding requirements for the construction itself, so that the public does not end up having to be out of pocket, expend money, and lessen and decrease the risk of doing an agreement with a private developer. So in sum, basically, you have a statute that allows you to consider unsolicited proposals. There is a notice that needs to be published. You publish the notice, you complied with the statute, and your agreement that you're entering into complies with the requirements under the statute for the safeguards that need to be in effect to protect the city. So basically that concludes my portion of the presentation. And Mac,
Thank you. So,
do you have any questions?
I'd just like to know, did anybody send anything in when we advertised?
we received no responses.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I wanted to put that on the record.
Thank you.
So, Mayor, if I may.
Yeah, go ahead.
So I just wanted to clarify that we did meet all requirements of the statute for P3. Mr. Lawler will now speak to us just in terms of the economic incentives for the city, the protections that exist for the city, the due diligence. Mr. Kevin, can you please come up? And then we'll quickly sum it up. The applicant has requested to just have a brief statement to Mayor and Council. And then, obviously, this is a workshop, so we'll be here for questions and any answers we may have. Thank you, Kevin.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Kevin Lawler of NK Ventures, West Palm Beach, Florida. As Mac introduced, I have been part of the city's team since back in late November, and my charge, because of my background in helping public agencies structure public-private deals, not necessarily under the statute, has been to look at this from the city's point of view. And with these public-private deals, just let me just start with a sort of introduction. What you try to look at not is this a good deal or a bad deal at the outset? Ask the financial question, are the parties' interests aligned? Is there any place in this deal structure where you can eventually have a collision, both operationally or financially? And second, is the deal balanced? Balanced from the point of view of taking risks and returns. The original proposal that was submitted by Soccer Development Group involved substantially what's in the current agreement with regard to a $2.5 million investment in the project. That's about $1.6 million of bricks and mortar investment. And it did involve the scholarships. It involved the $50,000 of collateral investment in the park. But on the revenue side, and I think this is where the deal has changed significantly since we started. On the revenue side, they came in the spirit of, okay, this is a public-private partnership. You'll participate on the bottom line of our operations after we recover our capital. Looking at the city's interest and looking at the ability to actually monitor and determine what is the bottom line, we initially turned the deal around to say, no, we want a different revenue formulation. We went through a number of back and forths with Soccer Development Group, and what's in the current agreement structure is basically that the city will receive annual revenue from their operations equal to the greater of $36,000 a year base fee or 5.5% of their gross revenue. According to their projections over the 10-year period, that would monetize roughly into $977,000 to the city. A third of that would be in the base payment and two-thirds would be in the participation payment. That structure also provides, they came back during the course of negotiations and said, we have a ramp-up year. We need to get stabilized. They came back and asked the city for relief for any minimum payments during the first year. That is now part of the deal. What this structure basically does is assure the city gets a minimum payment per year, which is a pretty modest percentage of their overall revenue. But as they do better, the city gets to participate in that. So the gross revenue, using their projections, that the city could realize from this during a year after they've stabilized starts off roughly at about $88,000 a year, and over the 10-year period would accrete up to about $115,000 a year. Basically, the city's protected. it gets a minimum payment of $36,000 a year, and if they do better than the base payment, the city gets 5.5% of the gross revenue. In terms of this deal, one of the core questions that we asked at the outset was, okay, the deal may look financially attractive to the city. What is the likelihood this group is really capable of performing as they have projected? And that's part of what we went through as a due diligence process. And the due diligence process involved looking at their team's experience, not only in ownership and operation of soccer schools like this, but also in terms of have they constructed, designed them, validating the organization and validating their financial capability. In your package, I believe, is probably the resumes and background of the principals involved in Soccer Development Group. I think you'll find it's pretty extensive and impressive in some ways. Individually, this group does not operate as a company elsewhere, but each of the partners and principals in this group have experience in ownership and operation of soccer schools and academies, all in Argentina. And then their development experience, their team member involved, has actually developed sports facilities here in South Florida. With regard to their financial capability, this is a new entity that they're forming, a limited liability corporation. It is not yet capitalized. And while the principals involved have demonstrated that they personally have substantial financial capability, what we've done to structure this deal is basically say this deal does not become, it becomes legally effective, but it doesn't become operational until they demonstrate to the city's satisfaction that the $2.5 million that they've committed to put into this project is in current funds, not future funds, not loans, in current funds in a bank here in South Florida. I understand they've set up the bank account once this agreement has been approved. If it is approved, assuming it is approved, then they will demonstrate to the city's satisfaction and form that they have the $2.5 million going forward to invest in this soccer academy. Basically, what the deal also involves is the $2.5 million is the gross amount that they'll be investing. The bricks and mortar amount into these facilities that will go into the park is about $1.5 million. They will also fund or $750,000 back to the city for the city's incurred cost for outside advisors, Stephen and myself. And they will invest another $50,000 in the park at the city's discretion. And then, of course, Mac has referred to the two different tiers of scholarships, 20 each, that they'll be providing. Those are the financial terms. In terms of protection of the city's interest, when they get ready to proceed into construction, they have to provide a construction bond in the city's favor for completion of the facility. As I mentioned before, they have to provide proof of funds. And I think one other non-financial issue, but I think that all the team was concerned about, is this entity is branded as Boca Juniors. And should that brand not be there, they have an opportunity to replace it with an equal or better. But the city would have the right to cancel this agreement if it became an unbranded soccer academy. And I think that it's in part for the city's interest and for stature and eventually the success of this facility, that having an appropriate equal or better branding is an important part of this deal. I'm available to answer any questions you might have.
Anyone? Questions? Councilwoman Smith?
I didn't believe you was first.
Go ahead.
Oh, I didn't see you. Sorry.
How long is the term of the agreement?
It's the initial term is 10 years, and then there are 2 5-year renewals. After that, those 5-year renewals have a number of conditions attached to them.
Are they automatic renewals?
They are. They're automatic renewing, provided the agreement is met by the contractor.
Provided the conditions are
Conditions
met, they
are
become
correct. Thank you.
automatic. So they're not just hit the button. If it's
There's a criteria.
renew, there's a criteria, and if they don't meet those criteria, then they have
Right.
to come back and seek formal approval rather than automatic approval.
Right.
The criteria you outlined just now?
It's a much longer list going forward. Going upon renewal, they have to demonstrate continued liquidity, meaning they have the adequate cash on hand. They have to demonstrate that they have and will continue to maintain this as a premier facility. In other words, they're reinvesting money in this over time. They have to
Those personnel involved can't have serious malfeasance or character issues after we do the background checks.
Sorry.
And so a variety of conditions that have to be met, but provided the conditions of the agreement are met, the agreement is auto-renewing, and that's from the contractor's perspective. They're building a building, a big facility. It's not as if it's completely service provided. And so for that capital investment that they're providing into the city, they're asking for some reassurance of a long-term commitment equal to the asset they will be turning over to the city at the end of the agreement.
At the end of 20 years.
Yes, ma'am.
And is there any provision in there that, let's say, for their concession stands or for their cleanup, that they hire North Miami Beach residents?
The requirement of hiring North Miami Beach residents is not part of the contract. The only part of requiring the local residents are the scholarships. There is a requirement, for the quality of maintenance and the upkeep, as well as the parking facilities. We'll share the maintenance for any of the parking facilities, but not for hiring the labor.
Did we want to touch upon maybe Steve Selkowitz can talk a little bit about, because it's a good question, but we're looking at the economic impact of what this type of program can bring to the CRA.
I am 110% seeing that not only does the impact bring to the CRA, what's happening in the city right now, the timing couldn't be, more perfect. As we bring in this state-of-the-art development, which is a few blocks from this facility on 19th Avenue, there will be a much greater enjoyment from our residents and a lot more people coming into the city to enjoy this facility. And to me, I'm looking at it, I understand the scholarship, so don't everybody jump on me, but I'm looking at it as if we're leasing them the property for a certain fee so that they can have utilization of the property, and we get a lot of benefits, no question about it, and that's part of the package of the lease. But I just wanted to put on record, A, how long does it go for, and B, without the fact that we retain it, I wanted to also see if there's a way to incorporate for the jobs that are not the professional soccer, to incorporate the residents in the employment. And that was my questions. Other than that, I think for a piece of property that has sat there, it's just a great shot in the arm for our city. But I would love to incorporate that one issue into it if we could.
One thing that I want to also remind you, that these 20 scholarships that are available each year
From North Miami Beach residents
for
only.
North Miami
right.
Beach
I
residents.
get that loud and clear, but those children that will benefit, many of them have parents that can't afford to buy the soccer shoes, let alone bring them in a car to the field. So it would be nice if we would incorporate a little bit of that into it.
I don't think that they would have a problem if there's, concession attendants, or if they needed somebody,
And
a janitorial position, that we can work with them on that.
that's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of certainly not the professional soccer players, because they're the ones that have the expertise.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Councilman DeFlip?
I do have one question for Mr. Kevin, right?
Yeah.
When you went over the numbers, as I was writing it down, I'm trying to figure them out. So it's basically like a $2.5 million investment. You said about 1.5 is going to be put into
Bricks and mortar.
Into bricks and mortar?
Almost 1.6.
1.6, and then in return, the city's going to recover $750,000 back.
Over the 10-year period, it's $977,000 based on their projection.
That's
Remember,
what
the city's not recovering.
I
It's
just-
getting
Right.
getting the investment on one hand from this private entity, Soccer Development Group.
Right.
They're putting up the $2.5 million for it, but this Councilwoman Smith is exactly right. I treat this as a real estate transaction, even though we're calling it something else.
But it is something else. I'm just saying.
It is
my
something
mind.
else, but it has a metric that runs.
I'm just
roughly-
trying to find out the period of time. So it's over 10 years, and then the 50,000 that's given back to the city, is that yearly or is that?
No, that's one time
One
up
time.
front in the first year.
Okay.
That's part of their capital investment. While the facility is being constructed here, they will provide an additional $50,000 of improvements to the park
Okay. And have
at
we
the city's discretion. It's the city decides how that $50,000 is going to be used.
has our management staff spoken to you about art in public places? Have we sat down and spoke about that?
We haven't discussed art in public places. What we have discussed is the needs that we're not meeting today, that, for example, this building can meet. And I'll just give you a couple that are key. We have a storage container out there right across from our amphitheater. Okay. In addition to that, in our amphitheater, we have 2 dressing rooms. Well, they're full of storage. What this building is going to do is that storage container is going to go. The 2 rooms that could be better utilized when we have performances and use the amphitheater like it should be used will be gone. We'll have restrooms that we could use rather than every time we have an event, we have to like rent porta toilets and those things. So it's going to take care of a lot of our needs that are not met. The art in public places is something that, Jose, I can't see the attorney, but Jose and I have discussed, and that's an ordinance that we could put together that usually is like a percent or half a percentage of any project in excess of $500,000.
I think this would be the perfect opportunity for us to start this particular area and maybe produce something nice in this fantastic component that they're offering us to be able to put that into place. So that may be something to think about. And lastly, my question was directed to Attorney Smith. Does this in any way, shape, form affect any type of agreement that we have currently on this land?
The answer is no, and I've had an opportunity now to go back, not only check all the property records,
Okay.
and we've got a clean bill of health in terms of title restrictions, limitations, those type of things. And also, I went back and looked at the community development block grants that were given by the county to this park, as well as some other bond revenues that the city received a number of years ago. And there's absolutely no restriction or limitation on how we go about doing this public-private partnership. We can go ahead, and there is no restriction whatsoever.
Fantastic. My concerns have been addressed, and I look forward to seeing some art in public places. Makes it look a lot nice.
Maybe
lot nicer.
Rito can do one of those soccer
I'll turn it
players.
back over to the MAC.
Any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Are we asking questions right now generally, or just to Mr. Lawler, or what?
I think we can go on. We've heard from our 2 outside consultants, right? So I guess let's fire away with general questions. I mean, I know the applicants here, the attorneys here. I mean, unless are the proposers making another presentation? Then if that's the case, let's let them do their thing, and then we'll fire away with the general. Do you have one just for Lawler, for Mr. Lawler?
Well, the one that would be specific for Mr. Lawler is it's
Mr. Lawler, if
really
you could-
nice
thanks.
that they have to show that account with $2.5 million exists as of a date certain. How long do they have to continue to maintain it? And is
They're going to have to pony up within anywhere from 6 to 9 months to start construction, and they have to have a construction bond. Once the city has assurance that they are capitalized and starting, the next major financial event really is they have to reimburse the city $7,500. They have to pull a construction contract.
Right.
And if they can't pay their contractor, the contractor's not going to have a bond. Go down the list. So I think there's adequate protection. It's unlikely, and you can ask Mr. Rothstein about their entity capitalization. but I couldn't conceive of where they'd put $2.5 million in an account for whatever short period of time into a single or LLC and then take it back up. Another protection that is in the city's interest in this deal, they can't put debt on this property, so they can't, this has to be, they may borrow within their entity, but they can't go out and get a bank loan and put a lien against this property. They're going to have their own capitalization to move this deal forward.
And I got that, but when you were standing here and addressing us, you said that that it's not yet capitalized and that the deal would not be operational until the city is satisfied that there's $2.5 million in funds and available.
I did say that.
Okay. Is there somewhere in this contract that says that $2.5 million stays there and is only used for the construction, hard and soft costs, until it's substantially complete?
No.
Some sort of guarantee, and no offense to the people who are here, but those of us who have lived in South Florida for a long time have seen money come and go, accounts disappear, and I'm just...
Well, isn't that, wouldn't the bond, isn't that what the construction bond is for?
Because the next form of if they can't operate, they're going to default on this agreement, basically. Right. If they don't have the capital to continue, if they don't have the capital, pay their architects, move forward, enter into a construction contract, because the contractor is not going to start without determining their financial capability to fund. What happens within their account, $2.5 million, I took the position that we wanted to be assured they had financial capacity at the outset. The next major event that the city's affected by their capitalization is, do they have funds on hand to build the bricks and mortar here? And what happens with the delta, the difference between the 1.6 and the 2.5? That's within their operating entity. It's their soft cost. If they can't pay their architects, if they can't pay their fees, they're going to default on this agreement.
And I'm guessing that the city really has no real concern as to how many members of the LLC there are, but is there going to be a designated, doesn't an LLC have to have a manager?
There is a managing member.
Daniel Rothstein is the member manager.
Okay.
And by oversight, we have reviewed the operating agreement, what's known as the OA, for the LLC, and I think I was comfortable after reading that Mr. Rothstein is going to be the member manager, and the terms of the OA keep him basically in this deal. One of the provisions in the overall agreement is they can't change senior management or overall management of this entity during more than 10%. I don't know how you take 10% of Mr. Rothstein away, but he's basically committed to this deal, the way this deal's
Mr. Lawler, 1 second. I know that
I was
Smith
just going to
had
add that if and when this agreement is executed by the city and by the parties, that it will remain in escrow with my office until I am assured that there is funding on the LLC, that the $2.5 million has been deposited into an account with the LLC. Now, theoretically, they could come back the next day and pull all the money out. What we're going to do eventually is, before they start mobilizing and getting construction in process, that we will have a payment and security bond to make sure that we don't end up with a hole in the ground, that there's going to be somebody that's going to back whatever investment expectations we have. But nothing will happen until there's $2.5 million in the bank.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Lawler. Let's go ahead and, if we can get the proposer.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council members. For the record, my name is Javi Vasquez. I'm with the law office of Berger Singerman. I represent Soccer Development Group. And I'd like to, first of all, once again, introduce Mr. Rothstein and Gustavo Burlado, who are here with me tonight on behalf of the private side of this deal. Tonight represents close to 1 year of meetings and discussions, submittals, procurement compliance, vetting, financial due diligence, and drafting and negotiations of a management agreement which represents the start of something very, very, very special in the city of North Miami Beach, or as Steve mentioned, a cutting-edge situation, one that no city in the state of Florida has seen. It's a first of its kind. It's been a very transparent process pursuant to the statutory compliance that's been discussed over and over tonight. It's been one that's been very sensitive to your residents with some of the protection measures that have been just touched on. I can tell you that I've lived, my clients have been put through the grinder by your very able staff, and I can commend them for that. And one that obviously represents instant economic development and stimulus to your city like you've never seen. I'd like to say a couple of thank yous tonight. First of all, to your city manager, Ana Garcia. I think Ana said it very well, and that the next thank you has to go to Max Serta. I cannot begin to tell you guys how many hours, after hours, Sunday nights, I was on the phone with this guy. And I don't know if he has gotten a whole lot of sleep in the last 2 weeks, but I don't think so.
You guys went out Valentine's Day, right?
Yeah, we went out for it now. But I also would like to say thanks to Jose Smith, to Sarah Johnston, to Steve and Kevin, who are here tonight, Valerie Haber from Steve's office, who has been very, very involved, Paulette Murphy in the Parks Department, Liz and Nicole in your office, and the Marias in the Law Department. Everybody has been a big part of this. I call here now, and any of us call here now, and it's honestly, we've been treated like the partners that this partnership represents, and we are forever grateful. I have submitted, for the record, a letter that was written by the president of Boca Juniors, Mr. Fabian Parra, which basically congratulates the city for tonight's actions. Maybe putting the cart ahead of the horse, but assuming approval tonight, congratulates the city for this action tonight and extends their 100% support of this endeavor. And I will respectfully request, and we're here just to be available for questions tonight, but I would be remiss if I didn't say these thank yous and acknowledgments tonight. But I would, before leaving the podium, would invite every council member to send a resounding yes to this proposal. This is the first of its kind, and it deserves a unanimous vote. And I invite everybody, encourage everybody to join what is a legacy project that you will each leave behind as elected officials in this town. So once again, on behalf of Soccer Development Group, I thank every single one of you.
Thank you, Mr. Vasquez. If there's other questions, well, go ahead, and I'll leave mine for last. Go ahead.
I just wanted to see if his clients would add that when they employ the staff to man and clean up, and the staff that's not the professional soccer, if they would give priority to North Miami Beach Rec.
I'll ask Daniel Rothstein to come forward.
We need you on the microphone.
For us, it's going to be a pleasure. I don't see any problem if it is legally permitted that we can choose.
We'll ask our attorney.
From one place to another. I don't know if it's here, but for me, of course.
Thank
you. See what our attorney says.
Not only is it legal, it's done in most of these kinds of management agreements. It's encouraged.
Well, we encourage it here. We thank you. And the fact that you're doing that for our residents with 20 students, it means that the parents have an opportunity to be able to buy the shoes and to be able to come and be a part of something that elite get. And now I appreciate that you'll include them as well. Thank you very much. Please add that.
It's going to be a pleasure. Thank
you. You had general questions. Everybody's here, so.
Okay, I'm still trying to figure out how Little League plays baseball. Because I'm sorry? I mean, I read what was online, which is not the same agreement that's here, so I wish somebody would have called and given me a heads up not to bother reading that. But I'm looking at what's under tab 4, and it sure looks like part of what was Mishcon Field is now going to be part of, and I can't tell what I'm looking. Can you go to tab 4?
It's the same thing as here, right?
Right, okay. I got that. Tab 4.
The schematic you're showing, right?
It's under, we
Page,
walked,
42,
we walked
page
in tonight and this book is here. Under tab 4.
Page 42, the bottom.
Oh, page 42, I'm
Just go
sorry.
to page 42.
It's the one that's over here. It's the picture that's over here.
Will he need a microphone
Yeah.
to speak?
Yes,
Yeah.
it is.
Exactly.
Hold on a minute.
Move your thing around. You got
I
to
think
turn it
Councilwoman
this-
Spiegel, you're referring to the dotted lines, right? Is that what you're referring to, the dotted lines?
The area that is cross-hatched, that long, narrow,
That's a walkway. It used to be like a walkway.
Let's hold on. Let's just get the explanation. The architect is right here, so.
do we understand that it just, the city of North Miami Beach for at least the 37 years that I've been down here has been extremely committed and extremely supportive of our kids playing in Little League and providing Little League fields. I just want to make certain that we are continuing to enable those kids to go through Little League. So this stretch where it's cross-hatched looks like we may be taking away dugouts, coaching areas, whatever.
I explain.
Thank you.
No problem. How are you? Gustavo Volado, 346 Conservation Drive West. No, we respect the line for the baseball field. The only that hatch here is showing all the drainage area. We use only this hatched area.
Only the diagonal lines are going to be soccer field?
At this moment, the fence is going. Do you see this line? This is the existing fence. Okay, this is a regular line, and we need to make this path. This is only for drainage area. We respect the same size with the reglementary baseball field. We don't change any game area.
Okay, then, and this is really, I apologize to people who are trying to watch, and
Yeah.
is there a diagram that, under tab 4 that we could put up so the whole world could see what we're talking about? No?
It's on the screen.
It's that diagram right there, except that the drainage is more clearly defined in your diagram.
Yeah, but it's,
Okay, so what is going, the soccer field that is touching between right and center field, is that the soccer field where the main tournaments are going to be?
no, that's the soccer field. That's the soccer field where they currently play soccer now.
So what is that going to be?
That can continue to be.
They're not addressing that. That's not their area.
Councilwoman Spiegel, if I
That's
could.
not their area.
You heard Kevin mention to you that this thing was scaled back from the original submittal being all of Mishcon Park to a much smaller portion. The first diagram to your left, the hashed mark in black, now represents what's before you tonight. Everything else remains intact in Mishcon Park. When you go to the portion of this agreement, and I believe it's 7.4, that talks about maintenance and repairs, that is shared on a pro rata basis based on area that we are going to be occupying, which is 35% of the park. So again, much less than half of what we originally started with,
Okay.
and it was all based on your staff's concern about your existing programs not being compromised. That's why everything remains the way it is.
Okay, so, you know what, 7.4 is actually one of my questions with regard to the fixed percentage of responsibility for parking. On the original plans that were presented to us in an informational session, you folks were going to be building new parking. Are you still going to be building new parking?
I'm not aware of any plan that required new parking, original or revised.
I thought that you were moving the parking around, landscaping it, putting it in different places.
Nope.
Not happening.
There was never, we haven't changed our minds. That was never a part of our submittal.
Okay, this is a question 4.10 says that other uses. In the event the contractor seeks to use the premises for additional programs or services activities and uses which are materially different than the approved uses. It goes to the manager. Why doesn't it come back before council? Council's responsible for setting policy. Assuming that council votes for this, we're voting for a world-renowned soccer program. If it's a materially different use, respectfully, I think it should come back to whoever the council is at that time.
Let's get to the attorney. Our attorney let's see what our attorney has to say about that.
Page 10.
This is intended to allow some flexibility on the part of the city to utilize the facility for something other than a soccer game. For example, if the city wanted to have a concert or wanted to have a performance or wanted to use it for something other than soccer, this would give the city manager the ability to authorize that. I don't think that it rises to the level of policy when you are operating a park system and you want to allow a variety of uses. If you believe that it is of such material change that it takes away from the brand that we're trying to create here, you could certainly ask that it come to the council. But I don't know that that's what the intent here is. I don't know that that the manager or her staff are anticipating anything that is different from any other park or any other use. But I'll let the manager weigh in on this. And
how about council? I mean, to me, the way the charter reads is that we set policy, and this doesn't say a temporary use or a one-time use. It says if they're going to do additional programs, services, activities, or uses which are materially different than the approved uses.
Let me weigh in from an operational and from a best practices. They have a soccer program. They may meet with the Parks and Rec director, and once a month they may want to do a flag football program, or there's a need that we have in the community. So we partner with them, and we use the field for another recreational use. Do you want that level of scrutiny?
What I want is if someone comes to them and says, you know, this would make a great drive-in movie theater. We want to use this area, park there, pitch tents, have movies here. That's a materially different use. So if it's going to be temporary, I want in my mind, I want the language changed that it's not a permanent use.
Okay.
If it's going to be a permanent change in use, I think it comes back to council because we're being sold soccer.
I think that.
Let's hang on a second. Let's go, Mr. Attorney. Is there a way to just tweak the language that will address the concern? Because it's a reasonable concern, and I'm sure that it's obviously not. It's not a big deal. We can change it and make it clear that that kind of change would have to come to the council.
Sure, we can do that.
Okay.
Okay, in 4.11 on page 11, if the manager determines that the use is detrimental to the objectives and the approved uses set forth herein, why isn't that grounds to terminate the contract?
If it goes on, if you go on to read, it says it may revoke or suspend.
Yeah. You go down to line 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Just
Actually,
continue reading.
May revoke, suspend, and or otherwise disallow the objectionable.
The objectionable uses, but not the contract. I don't. Okay.
we can add language saying that if it is not discontinued within
Right.
certain number of days, that it would be cause to call the contract into default.
Okay, this is probably a silly question, but the last paragraph in section 8, which is on page 15, the contractor agrees to require all of its personnel to notify the contractor in the city of any arrests or convictions. Don't you mean arrests and convictions?
Where are we?
It's just a...
What paragraph are you reading from?
The third paragraph there.
You're saying that
Yeah.
you want it
Yeah, what if somebody decides, well, it says arrests or convictions, I haven't been convicted yet, so I don't have to tell them about an arrest? I don't know. I'm just asking.
I think it requires both.
Yeah.
It's, yeah.
I would rather leave it the way it is, and I'll tell you why.
No, you know what? I'm just asking if you're satisfied with it.
No, I rather just be upfront and say that if we have a situation where an employee of the contractor is arrested for certain types of activities that may very well cause harm to any of our children, we want that individual excluded out. We shouldn't have to wait for a conviction. That individual should be suspended until the court decides whether or not he or she is guilty.
Okay. Is it reasonable to expect 362 days of the year that the soccer facility will be open from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m.? That just seemed to be a little onerous to me. In 9.1, that it says that the contractor shall open and operate the soccer facility from 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. every day of the year.
Let me answer your question this way. If nothing more after today, they're already $170,000 into this project. If this project is approved, they're going to pump another $2.5 million, as you've heard, plus all the numbers that you've heard. They have a revenue sharing obligation and participation with the city. They need every opportunity they can to make this project work. And I would suggest or think that it would be in your best interest that they be open as often as possible.
Oh, I'm just asking you folks whether that's reasonable, because I would hate to see somewhere down the line that you find that nobody is showing up at 7 a.m. and
But
to
that-
open it at 7 a.m. you have to have your workers there probably at 6 or 6:30.
I think
So I'm asking if that's reasonable to say 7 a.m. to 11 p.m. every single day of the year.
it could say could be open from May, but I think the shall probably
Yeah.
is, you don't want to be required to open till 11 p.m.
So-
I don't think, right?
The public will guide it.
Well, we
Okay.
welcome a park that has activity rather than a park that has no activity.
We got no problem. Let's just get
May
to
is-
what.
May is fine.
Let's get to whatever changes we need to make. Let's propose them and dispose them so that, and we can figure out whether we go.
May is good. May is good.
I don't, I don't
They-
know.
he-
Because, like I said, these
Mr.
are just
Attorney-
general
No,
questions.
absolutely.
May is good. May is good.
Mr. Smith, change that to may versus shall?
No, I
Or
think
what do you
No.
suggest?
I would suggest except as may be modified by the city manager.
As may be modified by agreement of the contractor and the city to meet.
That's good.
I mean,
No, the public will
All right,
spare
don't see any
that.
objection, so we'll
I
make
mean, you
that.
have a business plan, and if you're going to be open those hours, that's two shifts of employees every single day, is it not?
I'm sorry, ma'am.
That's going to be two shifts of employees every single day. Does that fit into the business model?
I'll let.
Because we don't want you to
The an-
fail.
Yeah, the answer is yes.
Okay, answer's yes.
Okay. For some reason, I put this in number 10, but I just didn't see it anywhere. If and when they have these major soccer events and people are coming in from all over the world and whatever, do they also pick up part of the additional police that have to be hired, or does that belong in this contract? I don't know.
I think with any special event, we would look at the needs for safety and security. I mean, that, whether it's our own event or their event, that's just part of the special event protocol.
If they have the event, the onus goes on them?
Yes.
Is it stated that way? Or
I didn't see it in there. That's why I'm
Oh,
asking.
no, hold on. Okay, he's got a few more.
I can't see who's that board is.
Let me get this board. I got it.
Okay. I miss it. Oh, great. Thanks, Jose.
Okay, so we're on the police.
Yeah, that's
Okay,
the general
let's get
question.
let's figure out what the right answer to that is.
But
I
if
guess
we're having an international soccer event that's going to go on for 5 days and we need to have extra police out there, that's going to be a huge chunk in our budget. And is that something that...
Let's talk about this for a second because it's a good question. The financial side of this joint venture or partnership agreement is provided for in this agreement very specifically and with some very significant responsibilities. We are seeing any special event in the city that takes place on this as a special event, no different than special events that you host now. And we want to make sure that you are not imposing on us the payment of overtime or anything having to do with police for a special event because there's already enough financial responsibility imposed on this company already. So I want to make sure that we're not creating additional responsibilities, financial responsibilities on Soccer Development Group beyond what's here now.
I mean, those special events trigger monies to the concession, trigger monies to the registration, which in turn trigger money to the city.
Right. But again, we have not had an opportunity to discuss that kind of an issue. We would have to see that if that's something that's going to be talked about. And there's no way we can just stand up here and say, yeah, we'll pay for your police protection for a special event. That's
how often
not
are
fair.
there special events? I don't know anything about soccer.
it's a clause in the contract, I think, what our colleague's referring to. But
are there?
I would defer manager.
We'll talk about it during the break, and we'll find a solution.
I would suspect that we would want to treat this the same as we would treat our tennis contract or any other event that goes on in our city. We have to be careful that we want to cover all the bases, but you could make this thing where it's unworkable.
Yeah.
And I don't want to go there. That's my initial reaction, but I'm relying on staff's input as to what is the right language for that.
Well, because the key is we can have a special event with the Little League. We can have a special event with football. We can have a special event with a multitude of
Well, we just did. We just had baseball opening day. We had a sergeant and 2 officers walking around with the crowd. So.
And I don't know your budget at all, but I would have to imagine that it contemplates special events.
Okay.
No, I was just going to add that it's definitely in our partner's interest, as it is in the city's interest, to provide security for all the users of the park, whether it's specifically in the contract or not. I think we have to address the issue of security because we don't want people getting hurt. We don't want chaos. So we'll come up with language that will address it.
This is a really general question. When I was reading all of this, it specifically says that no alcoholic beverages will ever be served. I thought at one point we had talked about maybe making a restaurant there that would be an end destination for some people to come. Mm-hmm. Did we really intend to say no alcohol ever? So that, if you were going to be open for dinner, say, and somehow Soccer Development Group was able to get a liquor license there to serve from 7 to 11?
We went from looking at the entire park to looking at a piece of a park. So we're looking more, rather than a restaurant, at a concession.
That's right.
Okay, so it's just going to be a concession. There's not going to be a restaurant then?
There is language that authorizes the sale of alcohol with the manager's approval.
Okay.
So it's not a flat-out ban.
That makes me more comfortable.
There's a special event. We can be open to that.
Right.
Okay.
That's smarter. That's smarter.
Don't want to preclude that from happening. And I apologize to everybody in the room, but this book was just... Look at page 22, Mr. Attorney.
Are you looking at the bottom right-hand numbers or the ones on the bottom middle?
Bottom right hand.
Bottom right hand, because bottom middle are not always legible.
Okay.
I'm still under tab 2. This is the contract. Go to the bottom of page 22 and
22.
figure out whether that paragraph somehow got cut and pasted from someplace.
To the right or to the bottom?
Right.
You're right.
Which one?
Okay.
Oh, the 1 and the 2?
Yeah.
Yeah, but
I think that it was cut and pasted from the wrong place or should have been deleted. So you might want to just like.
Okay. They'll fix it?
22, the bold paragraph has I and II, 1 and 2.
Yeah.
It's actually,
Oh, okay.
That's a typo. Yeah, remove that.
Okay. 17.3, this had to do with the auditing. And I think you changed this. And Mr. City Attorney, do they become a public entity to the extent that then they're covered by the Public Records Act?
They absolutely are. Any and all financial records as part of this transaction are public records.
Okay, so then how do we provide that the city manager or his or her designee shall be entitled to audit but not photocopy the contractor's records pertaining to its operation?
we talked about taking that out, the photocopying restriction.
Yeah, we can copy.
So it just needs, it's a technical change that needs to be to comply?
I can understand that they don't maybe have certain proprietary information that they don't want other soccer club, whatever, but once they become a public entity, I don't know that we have a solution for that right now, but I think you need to address it.
It's a legal question. Let's get our legal.
There are very few exceptions in the Sunshine Law, and one of the exceptions would be a trade secret type of issue, in which case it would not be a public record. But in just about every other respect, any financial records generated from this operation are public records.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Taxes and assessments, we give them the right to contest the taxes. I recognize that this is public land, and we're thinking that there's no right for the Dade County to tax it.
We're not anticipating that, but in the event.
In the event, Dade County sends a tax bill to the city because we own it. Doesn't there need to be specific language that if the city pays it to stop interest in, or to stop a tax certificate being sold?
Under what authority would you be taxed?
If we get a bill,
yeah,
they pay it.
Okay.
Under this agreement.
Okay, thank you.
19.2 provides that you can cancel your insurance with the agreement of the Parks and Rec director. Number one, I'm not comfortable that you're ever able to cancel your insurance. And number two, why would it be the Parks and Rec director and not the manager?
Who has that answer?
We'll actually change, canceling the insurance.
Which insurance are you referring to? Liability?
Liability.
Yes.
That should be.
I think that contemplates replacement, which includes cancellation.
But
okay, so it sounds like
you need to change.
Yeah,
the
we need to tweak
it
that, because
says
obviously
cancellation or change, and we should correct that part. I see what you're saying.
Just put change, right?
Right.
Cancellation.
right, but you would have. Mr. Smith, can we come up with some good language? What will make sure that we're always insured?
They're insured.
I mean,
that they provide insurance,
and that that the city's covered.
That they provide the
They
insurance.
cannot cancel any insurance without the insurance carrier letting us know about the cancellation, in which case we would make them buy insurance with another carrier before the expiration of the first.
I think our concern is just to make sure that whatever's in the agreement basically says what you just said.
Yes.
And that we can compel them to carry the insurance. Is that okay?
because I read 19.2 again, because I think it anticipates that they can cancel with the agreement of the Parks and Rec director, not the manager, and then if the city obtains the insurance, that they'll repay us. And so I'm guessing that maybe the thought process was that for some reason the city might be able to get a better rate on insurance, but I'd like it clear that they'll never not have insurance there. And so I don't know what the intent was, but I'd like it very clear that there must always be insurance naming the city as an insured.
Okay, no objection from anybody up here. That's
And can we change the Parks Director?
Yeah, that was in the original draft. We had made the Parks Director the contract manager on behalf of the city. Subsequently, we decided to change that and put you as the contract manager. So
Okay.
this is from an old draft.
Okay.
You know, can we put the city manager and/or designate?
It clearly says that.
Okay,
Okay.
perfect.
All right.
But we'll address Councilwoman Spiegel's concern that we will never be uninsured.
Shared by everybody up here, I'm sure.
Okay. Two more things.
Yeah, go.
I just want to make sure that I understand that after the first 10 years, city can cancel this agreement with 60 days notice for any reason?
No.
No.
Well, 22.6, termination for convenience. Except for the initial term of this agreement, during which the city may only terminate this agreement for cause, the city may terminate this agreement at any time during a renewal term at its convenience and without cause upon providing contractor 60 days written notice. Because that's not what I heard from our professionals, but that's what's written in here.
I agree that that is in conflict with what was stated earlier, that the contractor would not agree to a termination for convenience.
Yeah.
And
Correct.
this should be stricken.
Thank you for catching that.
Hey, pretty good that I read it while sitting up
Appreciate
here on the
that.
dais tonight. Okay, and then the last thing that makes me a little bit crazy, that the contractor shall be permitted to name the soccer facility subject to the approval of the city manager or his or her designee.
What number are you on? I'm sorry.
25.6.
25.3.
Well, then 25.3 is where it gives you the right to rename. 25.6 is where it's not after any individual has committed an illegal act. And I think that got me thinking that if we're going to rename something that the city owns, again, is that something that comes back before council?
Yeah.
Rather than the manager?
Yeah.
I agree.
Yep.
Yes. It should.
Okay, I apologize to the rest of my fellow council
No.
members. I'm sorry I hogged the time. I'm done.
Nobody objecting to that, so that one will be
Mr.
put in
Mayor.
there. Let me,
Did Councilwoman Spiegel have time to read the rest?
let me go over here to Councilman DiFilippo. Go ahead, Councilman DiFilippo.
Under item 5.0, actually item 5.4, where it states all food and beverages that are to be sold on this premises, if somehow in this language it could be interpreted or stated about our polystyrene ordinance that we have, that that type of material is not used.
I would too.
No styrofoam.
No star.
No styrofoam.
Then, no. I don't know how to say styrofoam in Spanish. Can't believe my mom never taught me that. Do you, Tony?
Huh?
Do you know how to say styrofoam in Spanish?
I think
Margaret.
we finished. Did you hear me say?
Actually, it's got a,
How do you say styrofoam?
Is that only for beer? Or? No, I'm only kidding.
are we okay with that?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
I don't see any, obviously there's the consensus here.
Good catch.
Anything else? Anybody else?
I'm not sure.
I've got, whoops, I lost my place here. Mr. Attorney, Madam Manager, I just wanted, there were a couple of things that were, important issues for me, and deal breakers if they were not there. But the number one, which I think we already went through, was the first one that that this cannot interfere or take away with the existing programming that we have, or the existing programming capabilities that we have at Mishcon Park, meaning Little League Baseball and 90-foot baseball. And I've studied the drawing, and I know that based on the layout, it appears to me that our right field accommodates a bigger right field than our left field. So and it appears to accommodate 90-foot base paths.
That's correct.
That's correct?
This does not interfere with baseball and with everything else that happens over there, including football and soccer.
Okay.
This is an enhancement to a program and an enhancement to a park.
Okay, I just want to make sure that we can still play 200-foot Little League or 60-foot Little League and 90-foot juniors ball or big baseball.
That's correct.
Second question was that this had to be a world-class enhancement to our city and our facilities, which I think obviously this meets that completely. I'm happy that we were able to work out an agreement that was 10 with 5 and 5, because just as a personal thing, I don't think that any council should bind future generations, so I like the timing. Mr. Attorney, I had the concern that, especially since we're in the middle of a Parks Master Plan and everything else, I want to make sure, do we have a reasonable and fair method in there in case there needs to be some relocation of this facility?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, we wrote in a condemnation clause.
Okay.
If the city ever needs to take this property back for another use, as long as the contractor is reimbursed its investment minus depreciation, they're okay with it.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure that we were covered because, we are in the process of looking at that, and we want to make sure that we can end up where we need to be for our residents. Okay, I wanted to make sure, and obviously you guys, I think we've already covered this, that this appears to be, and our expert has said that this is a fair deal for both ways. It's a good gain for the city, the facility, and at the end of this term, that new facility and everything, that investment that's been put there reverts back to the city, becomes the city's, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay, good. Yep. This is good because this is probably a facility we would not otherwise be able to build for a long time at our expense.
Mr. Mayor, if I could jump in on something you said
Sure.
a minute ago. I want to make sure you're clear on the term. That
20 years. I was going to mention it, too.
Yeah, because I want to make sure you're clear that.
Right, 20-year term.
Right.
A generation.
None of the numbers work if this, and we have every intention of being in compliance after 10 years.
No problem. Understood.
Okay. Good.
Thank you. I'm happy with it. I think it takes care of not interfere. It basically, we're taking an unused piece of field and we're turning it into something not just useful, but that's going to bring a massive amount of life to that whole park and that whole area. And the fact that it's a world-renowned program is really going to bring a lot of attention, and it's just going to bring a lot of attention, a lot of energy to our city. So I like it. I'm in favor. Thank you. Anyone else with anything else? Or?
No, I just wanted to clarify, too, and I thank the attorney for doing that, because the way you said it, that it's a 10 and a 5-5. It's a 20-year contract, and as long as everybody performs, including the city, we have our obligation as well.
So the one question I just want to double-check now, Mr. Attorney, what's next in the process, in the procurement process? What happens next? Because this is just a workshop where we're tweaking the terms.
You will be approving the contract during your regular council meeting in a few minutes.
Okay.
And then we're going to make the corrections that you directed us to make.
Okay.
And then we will have
that's voted
contract.
on. Okay, perfect.
And what's the projection, Mr. Mayor, before we vote, what's the projection when the first ball will be kicked?
About a year.
The shovel in the ground.
Always the important question.
The ground break.
Bumped in the head?
Mr. Rothstein.
Yeah.
Can you come to the podium?
If you come to the podium for the microphone, for the microphone, because we need.
Sorry about that. This is Daniel Rothstein. Our target is to be ready on June, start working with first tryout for teachers and for kids in July, and start in August. That's our target.
August 15.
August 15, of course, because that is going to be the beginning of the season. If we don't start on August, almost we lost the 15th. So I would like to make a new trade here, because I think that Mr. Smith is going to have the contract in escrow until we pass. I will give you, Mr. Mayor,
in escrow, that's right. I want to make sure they hold it in escrow.
Very good.
Wow.
Well,
don't use it until.
Oh boy.
That's for the World Cup. I mean.
Well,
don't use it until.
Well,
Beautiful.
God willing, we'll all be out there.
It's in escrow, Mayor. Don't get excited.
Well, we still have to vote in a few minutes, so but it's a very sharp looking ball, and this looks like it's going to be a great thing for the city. So very excited to see this thing moving forward. Tell you what, we'll put it right here for right now. There,
Mayor, since
she called it Wilson.
That's good.
Javi, we're probably going to have a groundbreaking event.
Oh, absolutely.
within the
Since
next-
since this is something that's still going to be an action item on your council agenda, and since we've been here since quite a while for the workshop, we would just respectfully ask that you take this item on the front end of your agenda after your presentations, if you don't mind. If you could please accommodate.
We can probably do that.
We certainly appreciate it.
We'll take it up as soon as
You see,
we open our
lawyers are
meeting.
very sensitive to their clients. You see that?
Gotcha. All right. Thank you very much, Madam Manager, Mr. Attorney, everyone. Thank you. Let's adjourn our workshop right now, and we'll take, I guess, are we on time? Oh, we're a little bit over. So let's take about 5 minutes for them to reset the video for the regular meeting, and we'll be right back. Thank you, everyone.
By the way,